All right, welcome into Starting Five here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. We'll be coming to you about twice a week going forward. Our producer today is Manny Chang. Our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders. Our guy Danny, you can find him at allproconstructionbuilders.com. Hurricane season, I was saying for months it's around the corner. It's not. It's here. For now, it's in the Gulf Coast, but it'll be here soon, trust me. Make sure you get the storm doors, the storm windows from someone who will really treat you well. They got a family business. They use locally made, American-made products. Go to allproconstructionbuilders.com. Based in Dade County, but they service Monroe County and Broward County as well, and huge Miami sports fans, Danny especially. So reach out to him again. It's allproconstructionbuilders.com, and you can find him on Instagram at allproconstructionbuilders. The phone number, direct to Danny, 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. Also want to mention Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $500. That would be nice. Up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com, Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. They got a new logo and all that kind of stuff. So when you're looking, if you're using the app already, make sure you check, okay, and just type in Prize Picks on your search bar. You'll find it. Looks a little bit different than the one we've got up on the screen right now. So prizepicks.com, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. They've got the FIBA basketball on there, but make sure you get in the night before. They put up the props around 6 or 7 o'clock. Those games are starting as early as 4:30 or 3:30 Eastern time in the morning. Games have already been played this morning as well, although when I get off of here, I'm going to be playing some more. So go to Prize Picks, use the code 5, and, of course, if you're an NFL fan, all of that is on the board. The season props and the first week props are all up there. All right, let's get to it. We've got 2 stories going on right now in South Florida sports. Well, we got more than 2. Marlins are trying to hold on to dignity, not a wild card spot anymore, but trying to get back into that mix. So that's one thing. Of course, Messi is the biggest story we have internationally and even nationally at this stage. I mean, I can just tell you, our Messi and Company podcast is rolling. Make sure you check them out. They're getting 20,000, 25,000 views on post-game shows. And, of course, we don't know from match to match whether Messi's going to play, but when he ends up playing, as he did the other night, it ends up being something remarkable. But the 2 big stories here locally for Dolphins and Heat fans, of course, are they going to get 2 of the biggest stars in their respective sports? And so it got me thinking a little bit as we're entering the Colts. We are in already. The Colts sort of self-imposed deadline day, right? Like they wanted to make a trade by today, or they're going to hold on to Jonathan Taylor. And then, of course, with Portland Trailblazers and Joe Cronin, it doesn't seem like there is any deadline. They just plan on holding on to Dame forever, even after his unfortunate demise, maybe 30 years down the road. He will still be a member of the Portland Trailblazers, according to Joe Cronin. So it got me thinking a little bit about who is needed more for each franchise, because it feels like there is more dispute among Dolphin fans than there is among Heat fans. It feels like Heat fans are sort of begrudgingly in favor of going all in on Dame now. Is that fair? I think when they've seen Nikola Jovic and they like to keep Tyler Hero and all that, so they're kind of like, all right, we'll be fine if we don't trade for Dame. We like this young core. I'm seeing more and more in that on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on other spots, that like we don't really need to do this, but it feels like most Heat fans want to do it still, right? I mean, and we did an episode last night, which you should check out on 5 on the Floor, about like where Dame's season last year ranked, and I don't think people understand how good it was. It was one of the top 3 seasons of all time offensively by guards 32 or over. Now, that may seem like I'm saying, okay, that's like, how many games have you won on a Tuesday night in January against Detroit? But that's a real stat. Like we looked at offensive box minus, okay, which is a stat they use on Basketball Reference. And I was like, okay, let me look at guards from 32 years or older. And let me see who Dame was on the list with last year. And his season was a dead heat with 1 Steph Curry season and 1 Michael Jordan season, which, by the way, was the 72-win season. And there's nobody above them. And you look at the rest of that list, the top 20 seasons of all time for guards 32 or above, these seasons were below where Dame was. John Stockton, Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, Clyde Drexler, those were the players that were on the list. And then several other Jordan and Curry seasons below Dame's season from last year. So this is a player who not only has stayed at an extraordinarily high level, he's elevating. I mean, he had his best year. So I think most Heat fans recognize that to enough of a degree. They're like, okay, we'd love to keep Tyler. We'd love to keep Caleb. Jovic looks nice. We got a little attached to Jaquez, but we do what we have to do to make this trade. And I think that as you look at the Dolphins situation, it's somewhat different, actually. The Dolphins situation, it seems like it's a little bit more split 50-50. That, there's concern about the position that Jonathan Taylor plays, which, if you know me and my history as a reporter, I've been saying this for 20 years. I wrote columns all the way back to Ronnie Brown being drafted by the Dolphins in 2005, where I wrote a column saying they should not have drafted a running back in the top 5. You never draft a running back in the top 5. And I got scorched for it on local radio by a bunch of the older heads, the Hank Goldbergs of the world, who believed in the running back. And I just said, this is a position with declining value. It's about the corners. It's about the premium positions are left tackle, corner, the things that Jimmy Johnson used to say: left tackle, corner, quarterback, pass rusher. Those are the premium positions. Running back is not a premium position. Now, here we are 18 years ago, and it seems like everybody's caught up with that line of thinking. Nobody wants to pay running backs anymore. You don't need an elite running back to win a Super Bowl. We've seen that. Kansas City's just plugged in a variety of people. That's been the case for many teams that have won. The Patriots were like that for years. So there is this debate over running back. How valuable is a running back? And then it comes into, okay, how valuable is this particular running back? Now, this particular running back, if he's healthy, is elite. We saw that a couple of years ago. He wasn't healthy last year. We don't know exactly how healthy he is this year. It's a little murky under the circumstances because of the contract dispute. But there is a legitimate debate among Dolphin fans about whether or not it's worth expending this much, in terms of resources for a running back. And then there's the two parts of this, okay? Now, you kind of have the two parts of this with the Heat also, because you're talking about you have to trade assets for Dame, more assets than you would have to trade for Jonathan Taylor, okay, by far, right? I mean, talking about potentially 4 first-round picks. If you want to include Tyler Hero as one of the guys that gets you the first-round picks, and then possibly your last 2 first-round picks that you actually chose, and Jovic and Jaquez. So when you take a look at that, that's a lot more than the Dolphins are going to give up for Jonathan Taylor. I mean, the Dolphins are haggling over whether or not to give up a first-round pick, right? It's not about the compensation from a player perspective or a pick perspective. It's about the other compensation, which is the financial compensation. Now, for the Heat, that's significant also, because you're talking about $63 million at the end of that deal, and you're talking about that being restricted with the luxury tax in terms of other things that you're going to be able to do, and you're talking about potentially being in the second apron, which means that you don't have a bunch of these vehicles. Now, with the Dolphins, the restrictions are a little murkier on the financial end. See, here's where I come down on this. This is why, to me, I've been pushed to make the deal, and I'm not a running back guy, as I just said. But here's the thing. Let's say what you're giving up is a second-round pick and potentially a functional player. Like, let's say you're giving up a Mostert, whatever, who becomes redundant. Or let's say that you're giving up, Cedric Wilson, somebody you're trying to move anyway, right? But let's say you're giving up a player or something. I mean, whatever you give up can be replaced, player-wise or pick-wise, right? I mean, the Dolphins lost the first-round pick for basically flirting with Tom Brady. So I'm not going to freak out if they have to give up even a low-end first-round pick, although they should try not to, or certainly if they have to give up a second-round pick. I mean, we talk about them treasuring these first-round picks. I mean, they gave them up all for Hill, and that worked out pretty damn well, and they can give up somebody down the road to get a first-rounder if they need to, okay, if they have a play. I mean, who knows? I'm not going to mention Wilkins specifically, but there are players, if they needed to pivot a different direction. Obviously, we saw with Laramie Tunsil that they were able to get a ton of picks, right, for Laramie Tunsil at the time, who, was a first-round pick who dropped to them. So I'm not freaked out about that. And then I look at the money, and I'm like, all right, it's a lot of money for a back that Jonathan Taylor's looking for. It's money that the Colts were not willing to pay him, and they saw him every day. It's money that most around the league are not willing to pay running backs anymore. But every team's circumstance is different. And when I look at it this way, I'm like, first thing, the Dolphins have a very good cap guy in Brandon Shore, who's not as well known as Andy Ellisberg, but he's found a way to manipulate things for them in the past. The NFL cap is easier to manipulate than the NBA cap to begin with. And I just come down to this with the Heat and the Dolphins. And this is why I've actually come to the position, and I know most people will be surprised in this, that the Dolphins need to make this trade more than the Heat need to make the Dame trade. Because the Heat are going to have success either way. Because they're the Heat. And that may come off as arrogant as somebody who's covered more Heat than Dolphins over the past 25 years, although I've covered both. But they just find a way. And they did things in this offseason to keep themselves highly competitive for a team that got to the finals, fluky a little bit or not fluky, but they got to the finals without Tyler Hero. And that comes in for Alfredo. When Louis Riddick was on TV saying cancel the season to get Taylor, it makes you wonder if Greer should go a bit farther to appease Ursay. And I'm with you on that. And, of course, follow Alfredo on 3 yards per carry. We're going to get those episodes up here on the channel. Ethan has lost it. No, here's where I've come down, Manny. And I know it's inconsistent with everything I've said before about running backs, and it's inconsistent with my 3-month push for Dame here. But the Heat will be fine. The Heat will be fine. And part of it is because the Heat have been fine. And the Heat have this 20-year record of being fine. And when you take a look at their situation going forward, if what we're talking about is they have Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, developing players in Jovic and Jaquez, obviously, the same developmental staff that they have before. And I'm with you, Adam. I think they need to make the trade. I agree with you. I would make the trade. I've said that repeatedly. But I think the Dolphins need to make this trade more. And here's why. I don't know that the Dolphins are going to be back here in a position to contend. Because there's no record of that over the past 20, 25 years. The Dolphins have not followed up a strong season with another strong season since when? I mean, we going back to, 2008, they didn't follow it up. 2016, they didn't follow it up. And again, I know it's different management now, but again, they've gone through a bunch of different management groups trying to get this thing right, even though Greer's been there the whole time and maybe not in charge, but there the whole time. But you go all the way back. Are we going to say 2000, 2001 was the last time? 2000, because they made the playoffs both years. Okay, they won the one playoff game. That was it. In December 30th, 2000 with Lamar Smith. We're going back we're almost in the previous millennium at this stage. Okay, it's 25 years, roughly. So I don't know that they're going to be back here. So my thing on the Dolphins has been, when you have a move that you feel can potentially put you over the top, you make it. You make it. And then you sort out the details later. And look, if they end up being the Rams, okay, which I don't think they're going to be in that position, but if they end up being the Rams and they get the one ring, I don't even think it's a ring down here. I think it's just get to the AFC Championship game, right? People might have a parade for that. So I look at the two circumstances. I'm like, okay, in a vacuum, I would say it's more important for the Heat to get Dame, all right? Because we know what Dame is going to provide, all right? It's much easier to affect a basketball team than a football team as one guy, particularly when you are still a top 10, arguably top 5 offensive player in that entire sport, right? And not that Dame's a great defender, but you're on the court all the time. It's different than a running back who is affected by his offensive line, who is affected by play calls, who is affected by all that. Dame's not going to be affected by any of that. Give Dame the damn ball and get out of the way. Jimmy and Bam are going to be happy to do that, okay? So in a vacuum, it's Dame. There's no question. You go get Dame. I still believe in going to get Dame. But in the circumstances of the two franchises, the team that needs to take the swings is the Dolphins. The team that needs to say, let's do this now and sort it out later is the Dolphins. Because, look, if they fail, okay, if they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and even Christian Wilkins still on the roster and Jalen Ramsey comes back healthy and X is still here and all the rest of this and Jonathan Taylor, and they have this star-studded roster, and let's say they're the Eagles from a few years ago, not the current Eagles, but the Eagles that is supposed to be that dream team, right? And they were a flop. Okay, so then they're just another Dolphins flop. As compared to what? How many of those have there been over the past 25 years? Right? But at least they've made the push for it. they've made the run for it. The Heat, it seems like they can two-track this thing. They can go after Dame. If they get him, to me, they're the best team in the Eastern Conference with a chance to win the championship. If they don't get him, I still think they're a top 3 seed in the East with a chance to surprise people in the playoffs with a young developing roster behind Jimmy and Bam. So my take on this, which, again, may surprise people, the Dolphins need to get the Jonathan Taylor thing done today. Just get it done. Okay? If it requires the late first-round pick, aren't you counting on being in the bottom 5 of that draft? I mean, look, and here's the thing about, and I know we can argue about Greer and moves made and not made, but let's be honest here. We're at, year 4 of the Austin Jackson, Noah Igbenogany practice. I can never pronounce Noah's name. Experiments. Okay. So if you bust on a draft pick, is it all that different from trading the draft pick? And yes, if Jonathan Taylor comes here and he gets hurt in the second week or he doesn't make a huge contribution, or we're going to say they gave up too much, sure. But they've given up too much for guys before. San Francisco just gave up way too much for Trey Lance. The Dolphins were the beneficiaries of that. You take swings. Sometimes they don't work. The point is where you move on from there. The Dolphins need to take a swing today. I believe both Jonathan Taylor and Dame Lillard will be in the South Florida sports scene. I think Jonathan Taylor likely will be today. Okay? And I think he needs to be today. And then Dame, about a week before training camp, we're going to have a conversation. So that's where I came to this. I tried to work it all out here on screen for you guys. Let me know what you think. I'm going to poll this today. I'm jinxing him right before he gets here. No, don't blame. I'll disappear for the rest of the day if that helps. Check out. We're going to start doing some more spaces from our account. This comes in from Campo. Jimmy is a troll with the Dame celebrations. It feels inevitable. It is inevitable. It is inevitable. It will happen. This comes in from Randy Chambers. We'll get to some comments here again. Thanks to Manny. In fact, Jimmy keeps doing Dame celebration. Tells me it's inevitable. Look, I'll just say this, okay? And I don't know. We didn't end up doing the episode last night because Greg wasn't feeling good. We'll probably do it today. But this has come out, and I know Trilly has said this and others. Dame has been actively recruiting players to Miami. So if you don't think it's inevitable, if I don't think it's inevitable, he seems to think it's inevitable. He was actively recruiting Dennis Smith Jr. to Miami. But Dennis couldn't wait. From Broham, we always appreciate you here. Ethan, have you seen the latest Juice Store from Chris Haynes? I have not. I will check that out this morning. Actually, I'm trying to get Haynes on the pod, so working on that. And this comes in from Ron Baker. Do you see the Heat getting Christian Wood? I believe Christian Wood will be here if Jovic is traded. For sure. If Jovic is not traded, it's a little bit more 50-50. But that is a Dame-dependent move. Greg's reported that. I've heard the same thing. But they are interested, and they have been in contact with him, yes. So Oubre, also possibility. I've said this. It depends how many guys go out. Okay, this is one of the reasons they didn't sign Jamal Cain to the standard contract. Depends how many guys go out and what positions they go out at. And they're still trying to keep Tyler Hero, by the way, who wants to be here badly. Okay? But my belief is that the 3 guys who will be here are in order. Wood, Dragic, Oubre would be the 3 most likely to join, and you could get all 3. Campo, wonder if Maya would be done for tampering fine for a player isn't even on their roster doing recruiting. Very possible and a good way to end. Thank you, Campo. We always appreciate you on Playback. As all of you join us on Playback, we're going to be doing more of that as we come up here the rest of the week. Probably going to do an Oubre episode, and also we're going to do a couple of Dolphins playbacks this week. If Jonathan Taylor signs, we will be, or just is traded here, we will be on Playback. All right, thanks to Manny. Thanks to our producer, All Pro Construction Builders. Just try to set the table here every day. Not every day, but a couple times a week when I wake up and when Manny has the time. Check out everything else on the YouTube channel.